Their long-range radars detected Syrian fighters from dozens of miles away. As a result, the Israeli F-16 fighters engaged the Syrian fighters from more than 20 miles away with Sparrow radar-guided missiles. The Syrian squadrons were decimated before they could even fire their own missiles. One of the most impressive features of current Russian fighters is the latest generation of close-range dogfighting missiles. This missile, called the R-73 by the Russians and codenamed the Archer by Western intelligence, is widely regarded as the best in its class in the world today.
When it appeared, it came as an enormous surprise to the West, because here was a highly agile missile. It beat the pants off Sidewinder, and it also was a big weapon. It could knock down just about any target that was out there. The West had nothing that was comparable to this at all.
Finally, the true importance of missiles became evident in Operation Desert Storm. Hardly any Iraqi aircraft were shot down by gunfire. Instead, the vast majority of air-to-air engagements were at very long ranges, using radar missiles. Suddenly, the lessons of the Vietnam Air War were completely rewritten. The classic dogfight of swirling fighter planes locked in deadly one-on-one combat was disappearing. Air combat now takes place at vast distances, often at ranges where the enemy cannot even be seen with the human eye. Accurate long-range missiles may cause more than the extinction of the visual dogfight. Fighter aircraft must find a way to survive against such deadly weapons. Today's combat aircraft employ new technologies to do just that, survive and win the digital dogfights of the next century. The dominance of radar command and control and radar-guided missiles led fighter designers to consider different approaches to aircraft design. How could electronic sensors and the radar-guided missiles be defeated? Electronic jamming was attempted, but was only partially successful. In the 1980s, designers began to examine whether an aircraft could be made virtually invisible to radar. This new design is called stealth.
Stealth is a series of measures designed to make it as difficult as possible to detect and, more importantly, to track during an engagement sequence. There is no way of making a piece of equipment invisible. What you're trying to do is to make it as difficult as possible for your opponent to track it and engage it. A stealth aeroplane, the B-2, the F-117, are detectable. What makes it difficult for the opposition is that they can't track it.
The first aircraft of this kind was the F-117 stealth fighter. The term fighter is a bit of a misnomer. The F-117 is in fact a strike aircraft designed to attack ground targets. Its primary weapon systems are laser-guided bombs. The F-117 first proved the stealth concept and was followed by a second generation of stealth technology, the B-2 Spirit strategic bomber. The problem with stealth for fighter planes is that much of its effect comes from shaping the aircraft to reflect radar waves away from the enemy. These exotic shapes do not make a great deal of difference in bomber design, since there is not as great a need for speed or maneuverability. But fighters still need both speed and maneuverability, even in the missile age. Incorporating stealth features in fighters requires sacrifices in their performance. As a result, the next fighters to come online have been designed with a compromise in mind, searching for as much stealth capability as is possible without hindering performance. The first serious attempt at a true stealth fighter is the F-22 Advanced Tactical Fighter. Stealth requires important changes in design. For example, all of its missile armament must be carried internally, since externally carried missiles are too visible to radar. The main attraction of stealth fighters is that, in theory, it should be nearly impossible for the enemy to target such a fighter, unless they meet at close range. This gives a fighter with stealth characteristics the ability to fire many of its long-range radar-guided missiles way before the enemy fighters can even detect its presence. the F-22 has the most stealth features of any new fighter.
Developing stealth technology was a phenomenally expensive effort, I believe. We don't know because they were black programs and there's still much to come out of it. But I would think overall that the US has probably invested as much in stealth or low observability technology as it did in getting to the moon. Now, not every nation is it can afford that.
Still, many countries are not convinced that stealth is worth the trouble or the expense. But designs, such as the French Rafale, incorporate some stealth features. The Rafale is configured to reduce its visibility to radar without the need for the extensive structural changes and design compromises of the US F-22. This reduces its price tag compared to the American design.
What stealth absolutely isn't is a sort of single magic ring that you put on and makes you invisible. It's really more a goal. It's a set of requirements that you can design your aircraft to just as you design it for a given speed or range or weapon load.
For other European air forces, stealth has proven too expensive. The new European multinational Eurofighter has very limited stealth features due to cost problems. Instead of adopting stealth, the Eurofighter designers are developing a new generation missile, the Meteor, to enable fighters to strike enemy aircraft at ranges of over 50 miles, ranges inconceivable a generation ago. The top Russian fighter, the Sukhoi 27, and its latest version, the Sukhoi 35, seen here, have no stealth characteristics at all. The Russian Air Force was forced to abandon their own stealth fighter due to a lack of funding. The reality is that modern fighter design has become so expensive that few countries are able to afford even the non-stealth fighters. France's Rafale fighter has been plagued by funding delays, which stretched out its production and threatened to dramatically increase its cost. Some French officials have pushed to halt Rafale production for a decade, buying the older Mirage 2000 in the interim. A new version of Rafale with more stealth characteristics could be bought a decade from now. Originally planned to be half the cost of the US F-22, Rafale may end up being more expensive, even without full stealth features. Eurofighter 2000, being developed for the British, German, and Italian air forces, has been delayed so often by budget problems that there is the real possibility it too will end up being more expensive than even the F-22. Budget battles, rather than air combat, are now the new fighter's greatest enemy.
It won't print.
Fighter design. The JAS-37 Gripen represents a combination of the latest in weapons and electronics technology minus stealth. The Gripen will be armed with a highly effective AIM-120 AMRAAM missile, imported from the United States. Later versions will employ the new Meteor missile, being developed in cooperation with Britain. The Gripen's powerful radar, combined with its missile armament, enables it to engage targets at ranges of over 50 miles. This balanced approach, combining the best in electronic sensors, airframe design, and advanced weapons, is likely to be more typical of fighters in the early 21st century than stealth fighter designs. Still, side by side, the Gripen does not measure up to the Eurofighter or Rafale. But this is not an indication of a lack of sophistication. In fact, the Gripen is just as high-tech as its European contemporaries. Rather, its design, namely its small size, reflects political and security considerations. All airfields in Sweden are very close to its borders. The Gripen was designed to be a point defense fighter. It is not required to fly missions deep into enemy territory. It is a tailor-made package, designed specifically with Sweden's security needs in mind. Coincidentally, these same specifications are desired by many other smaller countries. This has led many experts to suggest that the Gripen's time has come. Since the Air Force of the Soviet